Hi everybody, I want to talk about something that's kind of frustrating to see out in the wild and seems to trip out way more people than it doesn't when they get this type of advice. When it comes to writing, there's a lot of elements to it that you can break down into simpler terms, or to break things into categories that you can look at and analyze. You can look at something like a character arc, or look at something like a flat character versus a dynamic character. And you can look at these writing principles and these writing pieces of advice and these breakdowns of these complex topics that kind of simplify them into ways that are more approachable and understandable for beginners and critics who want to have an easier time understanding what makes art work the way it does. These things by no means are inherently bad, right? In fact, I think they're very useful for newer beginners to get a grasp on these very complex ideas in a much more simplified, streamlined manner. And not a bad idea to take some of these things, to study up and learn from other writers and learn how other writers express certain concepts, and use those simplified concepts to kind of learn and grapple with some more challenging aspects to writing. And you can take as many as you want, and it's probably, again, very, very beneficial to take as many of these diverse ideas that really capture and simplify and streamline these ideas to make them more manageable, more understandable, and easier to break down in such a way that you can kind of consciously think through the problem solving that's on display. This is where the actual problem comes in, because this is a very good thing for beginners to do. It is not a good thing for intermediate or advanced creators to do at all. When you are creating, essentially what is happening is your neurons that are developed in your brain are firing off. And as you learn and grow, you develop more neurons, and the neurons that are already there become stronger. Your brain is a neural network that is working on complex problem solving in what becomes known as an intuitive way. What's actually happening is it's running through lots of complex ideas very fast. So essentially what it could be doing is looking at that stuff you studied and practiced and running through it really, really fast to the point where you're instantly able to understand these complex ideas and able to implement it into your work. So for an illustrator, they might study how light reflects on things and how light has a different effect depending on how it hits things and the shading and different aspects when they're illustrating something, and consciously have to study and think about those things. But after a while, it just becomes subconscious. This is the same thing with any art form. As you learn something consciously, it starts to become subconscious and inevitably would become deep conscious. When these aspects become a subconscious part of your brain, that means you're using them at a higher level than what your conscious mind is capable of doing. Again, your subconscious is running way, 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 way faster than your conscious mind is even capable of comprehending, right? So for that reason, if you stop and think about what type of character is this? Is this a flat character? Is this a dynamic character? Is this a proper character arc? How is the pacing of this chapter? These are things that as you get better at writing, you no longer start to do. Your neural network in your brain is handling that information for you. It's doing it into an intuitive way. Or just in other words, it's calculating things so fast in your subconscious or your deep conscious mind that you no longer have to use your direct conscious mind to actually think about it. And you can leave your conscious mind to more directly solve current problems that you're working on. And that's the gap between these points. Your conscious mind should be used to actively work on things you don't currently understand, problems that you actively don't know the solution to yet. Your conscious mind is very good at that, but it's very slow and very particular, and you have to very actively think about the thing. Your subconscious mind can just do it. It can just intuitively put things down and understands things, and it's complicatedly going over large swaths of information all at the same time and reformatting it in a way that makes sense. You're intuitively writing something with good pacing or with a good character arc or with these other aspects that you studied and learned about, and you no longer have to break them down. And in fact, breaking them down to these simpler forms is doing a disservice to yourself and your writing. Why did you do that? Why did you die? Why is the battery bad? Why is the battery bad? Why did the battery die? I don't know. I don't understand. It's charging, but the show must go on. So, when you are writing and when you are taking something that's a subconscious thing already, it's already deeply embedded in your subconscious and you have an understanding of it and you can do it intuitively, looking at it and abstracting it back out to the conscious mind is slowing you down and making it weaker. Your subconscious mind is more powerful than your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is not as capable of creating art as your subconscious mind is. The same way your subconscious mind is not as capable as your deep conscious mind. And this is the way you want to progress as a creative. You want to take things from being conscious, active effort where you have to deliberate over every line you put down to just it naturally flows out of you from your subconscious mind to eventually things are in your deep conscious where it's not even a matter of something having to actually click into place because things are constantly already running and already fully figured out. So as an example, you might really deliberate over how exactly you're doing the lighting of a scene. You might then, eventually when it's subconscious, sit down and start like figuring out how the lighting works for an illustration, but like you're just kind of like doing it, you're not really thinking about it as you're doing it, you're just kind of like actively doing it, maybe you stop for a second, like you do a little bit here, do a little bit there, and like your subconscious mind is basically handling it as you're doing it. It's handling the problem at such a high speed that like you don't ever have to really pause or think about it because of how fast it is. Your deep conscious mind, on the other hand, is already figured it out. It's where this problem has been solved before. You're like drawing a drawing you've already drawn before. You already know how to do it. You literally don't have to have any of your other conscious mind or subconscious mind active because it's already deeply ingrained into you. Your neurons already are strong enough on their own that they immediately can fire off and you already instantly can do the thing. And in writing terms, that means that instead of deliberating over the lines you're putting down or just having the writing naturally flow out of your fingers, instead of that, it's like, oh, I already know everything that's going to happen in this scene. This scene's already done. I thought about the scene is done. I know every single twist and turn that's going to happen. Or on a larger scale, right? That can go bigger or go shorter, right? You can instantly know, like, this character said this entire line. To like, oh, this entire scene played out this way. Or this entire page. Or this entire book. You can really expand out depending on how deeply you understand the subject you're. In fact, it's probably much more easier to wrap your head around when we're talking about something nonfiction, right? If you're a real, true expert in your field, like top of the class, one of the best in the world, most knowledgeable about the thing you're writing on, and you're really, really knowledgeable about it, and you're a really good writer, your deep conscious probably is going to do a lot of the legwork before you even sit down to start writing. You probably already have the format of your book done. You probably already have tons of the information that you're going to put out there already fully articulated in your brain somewhere because your deep conscious mind is so in tune with the thing that you're actually working on. Taking things back and pulling things away from that doesn't make sense, and it's actively very harmful for both creatives and also for critics. If you're like taking apart art and taking apart other people's art using these very simplified, streamlined ways of doing it, such as like seeing if the character arc meets a certain structure that you heard about, or seeing if something follows the hero's journey. If you're actively doing that, you're harming your ability to actually be critical of art that you're taking in and breaking down, both your own art and also other creatives' arts. You need to have like a more nuanced appreciation for how things are structured than just like, is it following a structure I learned about? Is it doing X? Is it doing Y? Is it following these things I read in a writing manual? Because those are good things to help you learn and start to like have a grasp on this very nebulous, hard to get into thing, but like eventually become underutilized because they are not as effective as what your brain is capable to do on its own. Your intuitive understanding of art should raise above the level of like simplified, streamlined processes that you can look at and identify that easily. And again, you can build more significant and detailed processes in order to like break things down. You can have a more complicated, nuanced way of describing and breaking down art than just the simplified things you might find in a writing manual. But like, even doing that is essentially you're just taking what's already in your subconscious mind and you're just reforming it in a conscious way, which is not necessarily bad. Again, if you are doing analysis of something in a public forum, then you want that to be understandable. You want to take that thing where you inherently understand what's going on in a scene and you want to break it down and explain it in a way that makes sense. But it shouldn't be explained with like a one-liner. It shouldn't be explained in like, this character arc is bad because it didn't fit this exact format that I think is good ways of making a character arc, right? It should be a nuanced discussion on how that character arc affects everything else and the very complicated ecosystem that goes into a story. We have a light now. We did it. I've done it. I fixed it. I charged it for 5 seconds. I gotta be fast. Fast as Sonic. Which brings me into like the main focal, which is giving advice to creatives is at times very hard because of circumstances like this. It's hard to say, oh, here's like a few different writing concepts you can employ and practice with, because people like to latch onto those. They like to have them be iron tight. Like, these are the rules of writing you have to follow, rather than here's some starting points you can work off of to kind of start to get a grasp, to get your footing in on how to be a better writer, a better creative in general. And the kind of end up holding them back in the long run because they don't understand these are just like essentially training weights, training wheels that you put on that help you find your balance. But after you start getting good at balancing yourself within this field, you take the training wheels off. They're no longer something you should be using because they're only going to hold you back. You're not going to be as fast or as capable on a bike with training wheels than on a bike without training wheels. And again, you can expand this metaphor infinitely because, you know, road racing exists and there's all different types of bikes and there's mountain bikes and there's different like gears you can do and different types of wheels and metals, and you can take this metaphor infinitely if you want. But the main primary thing here is like when you're first learning to balance yourself within a creative field, it's good to have these training wheels that are very simple, that are very streamlined, that are very universal and very understandable, that you can put on and latch onto and use it to balance yourself until eventually you're able to like kind of hold your balance on your own. And eventually you want to get rid of those training wheels because they start holding you back more than they are helping you. And again, you can never go beyond those training wheels if you don't take them off, which is very important. Why, when someone gives these very simplistic pieces of advice, or these like, again, tried and true methods of like helping improve at your creative craft, that you understand they're just there as like starting points to build off of, but are to be eventually disregarded once you are beyond that level. In game terms, it's like a starting weapon that's kind of good. It's kind of like got good stats, but like as you level up and you get way better weapons, you're not going to keep using your starter weapon. You're going to use those better weapons you find that are more effective at what you're trying to do, and more effective for your class, and more effective for whatever thing that has, you're going to use the thing that has better stats. And using the thing that has worse stats is just going to hold you back. Even if your leveling is going up, even at a higher level, using a weaker weapon is just going to put you at a disadvantage. And that's the way to look at these things, is they're initial advancements, initial things are good. I don't think they are bad. I think they're good. I give advice to writers all the time along these lines, and I talk about things in a way that's understandable and using the common rhetoric that you see online, because I think they are beneficial. I think they've been thought out. I think some of these things have been around for many years and have been heavily refined and like make a lot of sense for a lot of aspects of writing, and can really get to the essence of what writing is and what it's about in a very simplified, understandable, nuanced way. And again, if someone doesn't understand it, they can easily go online and see hundreds of different videos talking about all the different ways to view that one particular thing that can give them a better example and like talk about it in a different way to the point where they should be able to understand it as long as they do the research. But again, the major problem comes in is that most people don't grow out of using their training wheel. That's the discussion point of this video. That's what I wanted to get across. I wanted to express this, so if I ever talk about these type of things in the future, you understand what I mean by them, or I can link back to this video, or you can link other people to this video to tell them that these training wheels are beneficial. They're really good. It's good for beginners, but you need to get rid of them at a certain point because they're only going to hold you back.